ride.
Want a lift?
Hey! Okay, dude, let's see what that jalopy can do!
What's a jalopy?
First off the line.
Yeah, I'm sure they're feeling pretty silly right now.
Hey guys, Zack here, and welcome back to Megas Month. So today's episode, Space Booty, is well, basically this episode is just an excuse for like it's just this long run. So it's just like this long running trope in anime where at some point there will be a villain who will be interested in the main female protagonist of the show, and this is basically that. That's basically what this plot line is in this episode. So it starts off with Coop alongside Jamie and Kiva, who are currently fighting inside of Megas, and they're trying to fight off a bunch of very dragon-like aliens. That we later find out are called the Glorfnauts, and of course Coop is trying to fight back against them, but he's clearly struggling, as there are quite a few of them. And Jamie even remarks that apparently it's Coop's fault that they're fighting him, by the way. But Jamie points out that he actually decided to actually fight them in the first place. And Coop pointed out that it wasn't exactly his intention or his fault. And but of course it quickly becomes apparent that Coop is kind of fighting an uphill battle. And to make matters worse, the check engine light suddenly turns on, and it becomes apparent that as we find out, Kiva notes that the hydraulics in Megas are actually overheating, and Coop reveals that it's most likely has something to do with the fact that he didn't stop for oil, and remarks that they probably should have done that before they left. But does point out that even despite the fact that they've run out of oil in Megas, he does point out that he does have an idea of how he does have an idea that they can leave it up to him, only for the Megas to kind of just shut up and not be able to move. And this causes Coop to remark that okay, maybe he doesn't have it. At which point the Glorfnaut kind of swarm on them, and Jamie wonders if there's anything worse than actually being attacked by the Glorfnaut. But then as out of the darkness of space, several lasers suddenly appear out of nowhere and fry all the Glorfnauts and send them all scattering. At which point, a giant space pirate ship called the Saving Grace suddenly appears out of nowhere, having apparently cloaked itself, and of course, Jamie remarks that since the Saving Grace has a giant skull face on the front of it, he remarks that is indeed much worse, and then they proceed to get sucked onto the ship, where we then meet the crew of pirates on the ship, and of course, Coop proceeds to point out that it almost reminds him of one of those cheesy pirate rides he was on. Only Jamie remarks that they're not puppets and they have real guns, and that they need to. And Kiva even tells Coop that they need to be very careful. At which point that we actually, well, not necessarily see the captain at first, but we definitely hear him, and we kind of see a bit of close-ups of him. But the captain of the ship then proceeds to greet his crew and ask what they found, and sure enough, they found a giant robot. After seeing the giant robot that they found, he does point out that the robot itself is actually pretty impressive, but he also wonders how the crew was able to actually face off against several Glorfnaut, and does point out that whoever engaged the Glorfnaut is indeed the leader of the crew, either is very brave or very stupid. And sure enough, Coop gets out, and he immediately states that they come in peace, but he accidentally winds up getting his wallet chain stuck and is trying to pull on it. So he gets his wallet chain stuck in Megas' door, and the leader of the pirates concludes that it was most likely the latter. And then proceeds to point out that he's more than happy to actually fight. That he's more than happy to scrap the robot for parts, and then tells the crew to get ready. Tells his crew to get ready to exterminate Coop and his friends. And of course, Coop immediately has a panic attack when he realizes that the pirates are actually locked on him. At which point, Kiva pokes her head out the window and tells him to get back in Megas and hurry the hell up and get to safety. But of course, the captain immediately stops when he sees Kiva, and he quickly falls head over heels in love with her and tells the crew to cease fire. And too late, they just barely miss hitting Coop. But of course, it's at this point where the captain then proceeds to introduce himself, and we finally see him. He's a man named Captain Warlock, and he immediately pulls out a rose and does kind of seemingly, while talking to Coop and Jamie without actually talking to Coop and Jamie, he's talking through them to Kiva, and of course greets them and offers them to be on his humble ship and offers to make them his guests of honor. And of course Coop is very flattered, but until of course he starts talking about how they are the most beautiful thing he's ever seen, and of course Coop immediately points out that he couldn't be talking about him, and Jamie points out that asks him maybe he's talking about Megas, but then of course it is indeed revealed that he is indeed talking about Kiva, and immediately approaches her with a rose. And proceeds to kiss her hand and remarks that he's never seen someone quite as beautiful as her. And of course, we find out that this is actually a recurring thing with Captain Warlock, because the various members of his crew outright remark that it's always redheads with him. And yeah, of course, we find out that it is indeed the case with him. Apparently, he apparently has a thing for redheads, according to his crew. And that does indeed confirm that later. But of course, Captain Warlock immediately greets Kiva and wonders what a beauty such as her is actually doing with a pair of, well, as he puts it, buffoons such as Coop and Jamie. And she merely remarks that she's working with them and that they're her crew. And of course Captain Warlock does offer to show Kiva around. And also is more than willing to offer up anything that they could absolutely want as their guests. And of course Coop immediately seizes this opportunity to look for some oil and maybe something to eat, pointing out that he needs an oil change for Megas, and of course Captain Warlock grants his request. But and of course Kiva points out that he most likely doesn't have anything he wants, pointing out that the only thing she's really interested in getting a new time drive unit. But which of course Captain Warlock immediately snatches up the opportunity of and immediately tells her that he does indeed have a time drive unit. Which of course she points out is very surprising, pointing out that she's not entirely sure how he came across it, but is very impressed if he does indeed have one, and he does indeed remark that he always gets everything he wants, which of course is a very cheesy pickup line, and that is a thing with his character. He has a lot of really cheesy pickup lines, but of course, upon hearing that he actually has a time drive, she quickly agrees to actually split up with Coop and Jamie, who she tells to go get the oil for Megas while she goes and looks for the time drive unit that Captain Warlock supposedly has. And of course, Coop immediately starts talking up the other pirates to try and figure out what exactly it is that they have for oil around there. Pointing out that he's a very particular guy, and that he does know what kind of oil his engine needs. He does know those kinds of things. It also remarks that they have cool hats and would like to have one. And of course this does result in an A plot and B plot throughout the episode, where Kiva goes to go explore with Captain Warlock, who continues to make unwanted advances toward her, while Coop and Jamie try to go look for oil, but wind up making a pit stop making a pit stop in the cafeteria because Coop smelled the food on the way to where they were supposed to go, and of course decides to make a bit of a detour into the cafeteria, where rather humorously, they quickly find out that Captain Warlock's cafeteria on the Saving Grace is actually stocked with a machine that kind of works like a 3D printer, in that it can just make whatever food the user wants. And of course, Coop immediately takes advantage of this to in his own words, he requests a Philly cheesesteak wrapped in bacon and deep fried. And of course the machine is more than happy to oblige. Jamie, meanwhile, immediately tries to use the machine to kind of create himself a woman, which of course doesn't work, because as we quickly find out, the machine can only create food, and that's just winds up becoming a recurring thing throughout the episode, where Jamie is trying to make a request to actually get something other than food to come out of the machine, and he can't succeed at it. Meanwhile, Captain Warlock leads him to his salvage hangar, where he has a whole bunch of ships lying around, and of course, while he's in there, he does also offer point out that of course that anything that she wants on the ship is hers to command, and then proceeds to, and which of course she points out is very flattering, but she's more than just happy to just kind of work through, to just kind of find the time drive and unit and leave. And of course Captain Warlock kind of understands, and Kiva's reaction to him is just a very obvious, yeah, thank you, but I'm not really interested kind of thing. She looks at him a little bit sympathetically, but it's very clear that she very much is not interested in him, like, at all. Even though he is constantly trying to pick her up with cheesy pickup lines. And he does eventually show her on board a giant green ship with a camo paint job, and does show her inside. Meanwhile, Coop has since become, well, not really friends, but has kind of sort of developed an odd acquaintanceship with several of the people on the ship, and it has indeed offered to show them how they do food eating competitions in Jersey City, and of course they don't fully understand that Jersey isn't the name of their planet, but rather the name of the city where he's from. But and even remark that it seems like a bit of a barbaric planet if they're able to host food, consume large amounts of food. But to ultimately decide that it could be interesting to watch, and decide to offer a bunch of bets to see if Coop can eat anything. And of course, Coop immediately offers up something of his own, pointing out that since his mom took away his allowance again for destroying the house constantly, and that doesn't make sense. Coop gets an allowance from his mom. It's explained that Coop gets an allowance from his mom because obviously he lives with his mom and helps her around the house. But it does make perfect sense that she would take away his allowance every time he destroys the house with Megas or something else. And it does make a lot of sense from a character standpoint. It does make sense that Coop would accidentally destroy the house and she would punish him by taking away his allowance. But he does offer up a bet of his own, which is that he offers up a Game Boy, or rather the in-universe Game Boy equivalent that the creators of the show decided to design for the show, and as well as 5 Game Boy games. And of course, the pirates immediately jump at the opportunity and to see if Coop can put his money where his mouth is. Meanwhile, Jamie is still trying to figure out how to get a woman to pop out of the machine, and eventually he just kind of settles on a donut because he quickly realizes that what he's trying to do isn't working. So he just settles on a donut and takes that, and then proceeds to join Coop at the table. And it's at this point where Kiva is actually searching through the pile of junk that's on the ship that Captain Warlock has shown her, and in the process she accidentally drops a device out of the bin of things that she's looking through, which and she and Captain Warlock both go to reach for it, and Captain Warlock offers it to her, and pointing out that someone as exquisite as her shouldn't be working with someone like Kiva and Jamie, and offers her a chance to stay. Pointing out that of course he would very much like for her to join his crew and be his queen, and also points out that they would be more than happy to show her the cosmos and all the other things that they could find together and actually explore, and that he could offer her a lot more than Coop and Jamie ever could. But of course, Kiva points out the very obvious problem, and that's she's not really interested in him, and B, when Captain Warlock points out why she continues to stay with the Jamie and Coop, and she points out that her place is with Megas, and by extension Kiva and Jamie and Coop, and does point out that of course she points out that the main reason she's staying with him is that one day is in the very near future, Coop will one day save the world from an alien invasion that's going to destroy her home planet, and she needs Coop for that. She needs Coop and his robot for that. And of course, it's at this point where Captain Warlock finally his patience finally wears out with Kiva, and he reveals that he actually does not indeed have a time drive unit that she can have, and instead reveals that he actually misled her on purpose, and then summons several of his pirate crew to actually surround her. And meanwhile, Coop is actually winds up getting accused of cheating by the pirates in the cafeteria for seemingly eating more food than a normal human should be able to consume. And of course, that's Coop's entire thing. He's basically just a bottomless stomach. But the crew doesn't fully understand that he has indeed trained himself to eat that much food that quickly, and of course accuse him of cheating, and they don't abide by cheaters, but rather hypocritically remark that unless it's one of them. And with that, they then proceed to arrest Jamie and Coop for cheating at a food eating competition. Meanwhile, Kiva quickly realizes that Captain Warlock has been lying to her, and upon realizing that Captain Warlock had no interest of ever letting her go, she quickly realizes that she's going to need to fight back, and of course, Captain Warlock even points this out as well, pointing out that nobody has ever actually escaped him, and that he always gets what he wants, and of course, Kiva then quickly proceeds to actually fight, annoyed by the fact that he's been lying to her and trying to manipulate her this whole time, proceeds to actually show off her impressive fighting skills to him. And while we don't get a clear cut of the fight that she's actually doing, Captain Warlock's reaction about how she's basically perfect because she's not only gorgeous but also is able to fight. This causes him to want her even more. And of course, after she deals with his crew, he then pulls out a sword, and offers and gives her a bit of an offer about how if she beats him in one-on-one combat, he will let her go. But if she doesn't, that she has to stay with him forever. And of course, she immediately picks up one of the discarded swords that several of his crew had dropped when she beat them, and does proceed to actually fight back against him in a rather impressive looking sword fight. And of course, this fight actually does lead him through several sections of the saving grace, and eventually we do find out something a little bit interesting about Captain Warlock, because as they're actually fighting through the base, as they're actually fighting through the ship, we actually wind up in a giant gallery where Kiva quickly finds out that it's not just her. And what we find out is that he has a very obsessive fetish for redheads, because what we find out is that he has a giant gallery that is full of all of the women and possibly one man that he has tried to seduce over the years. And it's a very androgynous looking person, and it's implied that he's bisexual. It's implied that he doesn't really care who or what the redhead actually winds up being. It's just any redhead. Be it an alien, be it a man, be it a woman, it doesn't matter to him. He just has a thing for redheads. But of course, Kiva then snaps out of her initial shock and continues fighting against Captain Warlock, where they eventually wind up in the hangar where it's revealed that Coop and Jamie have been hung up by shackles, and are revealed to just that's where they've been stuck for beating the guys at a food eating competition. And of course, Coop points out that that it's Kiva, that Kiva's there to actually save them, and Jamie points out that she's actually fighting in the wrong direction, and isn't actually paying attention to them. And of course, Kiva quickly notices that they're there, and continues to realize that she's going to need to fight back to actually save them. But of course, she does eventually succeed in actually beating Captain Warlock in a fight. But what we quickly find out is that Captain Warlock has no interest in actually honoring his bet. And what we quickly find out is that he's not really interested in letting Kiva go. And points out that now that she's beat him, that he's going to more than happily destroy her friends. And in that regard, she quickly realizes that Coop and Jamie's lives are more important than actually not giving Captain Warlock what he wants. And ultimately, even though Coop and Jamie continue to tell her to fight and kick some ass, she does indeed put down the sword that she picked up and agrees to stay with Captain Warlock on the grounds that she lets her friends go. And of course, Captain Warlock immediately agrees to that and points out that he's more than happy to, and then proceeds to have Coop and Jamie let go, and then proceeds to have them get back on the Megas, even though Coop points out that it seems to have all worked out for the better, but Jamie points out that they didn't have any sort of oil, and they never found any sort of oil, which Coop quickly points out that probably is indeed a problem. And of course, Kiva points out that Captain Warlock agreed to let them go in exchange for her. But Captain Warlock reveals that he actually put in a bit of a twist, which is that he didn't agree to let them go. But what happens after that is up to them, and sure enough, he then proceeds to eject them out of the ship, they then proceed to fall into the orbit of the Glorfnot planet that they were in earlier, and of course, what we actually find out is that because they have no way of actually controlling Megas, they're just kind of falling uncontrollably. And of course, Kiva becomes quickly annoyed by this, and then reveals that she lied as well, and proceeds to fight off several of Captain Warlock's men and proceeds to escape deeper into the ship. Meanwhile, Coop is trying to figure out a way to actually get the oil that he needs to actually fix Megas so that they can actually escape the terminal velocity that they're stuck in. And of course, then proceeds to actually reveal that he actually has several Philly cheesesteaks in his pocket. And when Jamie asks him where he actually got them, Coop tells him not to worry about it, although we just find out that he just went back for seconds and just grabbed a whole bunch of them, as well as some fries. And of course, Coop pointing out that it will likely be better than nothing to actually substitute for oil until they can get some real oil at Megas. Proceeds to squeeze out all of the grease from the Philly cheesesteaks and fries that he had in his pocket into the oil reserves, which does wind up being enough of a substitute oil for Megas to actually fight back. Meanwhile, Kiva has actually been cornered by Captain Warlock and his pirate friends, and Captain Warlock does offer her one last opportunity to actually be his queen, or she'll die. And of course, Kiva openly admits that she would rather die than be Captain Warlock's bride, which he does accept, and then tells his crew to actually kill her. And as they're closing in, Megas suddenly appears, and Coop tells her to hit the deck. And of course, Captain Warlock has no idea how he actually showed up, and B is very much concerned about the fact that Coop is now going to fly his giant robot into the side of his ship, and remarks that he wouldn't. But of course, Kiva does confirm that he would, pointing out that he doesn't know Coop like she does. And sure enough, he then proceeds to plow into the side of the ship, breaking one of the giant windows that are there. And then Coop then proceeds to detach the Kuma from Megas, and Kiva climbs inside. And of course, Coop does proceed to ask her at the very first opportunity if she was actually serious about leaving behind their crew to actually stay with Captain Warlock and save them. And of course, Jamie then proceeds to remark that of course any woman is actually sucker to a person in a pirate garb and a fancy accent. But of course Kiva just gets annoyed at Jamie for. But again, it's implied that Jamie has feelings for Kiva, because the way he remarks this almost seems like he's a little bit sad about the fact that she would easily fall for someone like that and not someone like him. The fact that it's implied that he's a little bit sad about the fact that Kiva would very easily fall for somebody that flashy. And yeah, that doesn't seem to imply the kind of body language and stuff that he's been doing. That was something I picked up in the episode. I don't know if that's actually the context that they were trying to give, but that seems to be the case. But in any case, Captain Warlock quickly becomes annoyed and tells his crew to surround Megas and attack it. At which point, Coop reattaches the Kuma back to Megas and proceeds to fly out of the window. And of course, this causes Captain Warlock to actually summon several giant robots to actually go and fight Megas. He summons several giant robots that I should mention are all pirate themed. They're basically just generic green robots, but they all have Jolly Rogers and pirate hats. So which of course Coop has to actually fight back against, and proceeds to summon the giant energy sword thing that he rarely uses but does have a thing. But of course he does proceed to summon it with a button that says giant energy sword thing, and proceeds to actually summon it and proceeds to start fighting back against the pirate robots by sword fighting. Basically, they all have their own energy swords, and he just fights back against them. And eventually, he does manage to destroy them all. But Captain Warlock points out that even though he defeated his robots, that Coop is no match for the might of the saving grace, and then proceeds to fire several blasts at Coop, one of which winds up hitting Megas, and Kiva quickly points out that they're not going to be able to actually fight back get back against him. At which point Captain Warlock then proceeds to appear on screen and proceeds to tell them that she has one last chance to actually join him and actually work it and actually become his queen. At which point Coop proceeds to go into his signature trash talk, only for Kiva to interrupt him and then proceed to give a trash talk of her own, which is really awesome. I think this is like the first time somebody else has given the trash talk, and I do kind of like that. But of course, Kiva then proceeds to take over Coop's trash talk and proceeds to point out that that Captain Warlock has pissed her off personally by trying to both break up their crew, kill her friends, and also subjected her to a bunch of cheesy pickup lines, which Coop and Jamie just kind of remark as nice. And Coop remarked that it's a bit of a nice burn. At which point Captain Warlock just seems a little bit flabbergasted on the other end of the phone. At which point Kiva asks Coop to go in and defeat him. And sure enough, Coop then proceeds to do exactly that, quickly realizes that he's not going to be able to fight back against the saving grace by on himself. But luckily, he has a built-in weapon that he uses to actually level the playing field, and then proceeds to press what is admittedly the exact same button he pressed earlier to summon the giant energy sword thing. And the caption on the button does indeed reveal that is indeed the case. But he does wind up summoning a weapon called the Equalizer, which has a giant, which basically just causes his dashboard to flip open, and a little button pops up, and Coop then proceeds to go to press it, only for it to do nothing, which is kind of, and of course Jamie and Kiva both look at him, pointing out that obviously they need that weapon to get working, or Captain Warlock's going to kill them. But and of course Coop just remarks that it's actually just a little bit stuck, and keeps pressing in frustration, and eventually headbutts the dashboard and the steering wheel, which causes his horn to go off. And of course Captain Warlock does point out that it is such a waste that he'll have to destroy someone like Kiva, and then proceeds to get ready to open fire. Only for the Glorfnauts from the nearby planet to actually suddenly hear Coop's horn and actually come to try and attack him. And of course this does mirror a little bit of an incident earlier where we do somewhat find out. I mean I didn't mention this because I'm bad at reviewing things, but and I'm bad at bringing things up when they come up. But this mirrors something earlier in the episode where Coop accidentally woke up all the Glorfnauts while he was trying to escape them with his horn. And of course the same thing happens here. All of the Glorfnauts are now annoyed with him and are trying to attack him because of his horn. And of course Captain Warlock then points out that this is wound up working out better than he expected, and then proceeds to actually cloak his ship so that they can't actually get into, so that the Glorfnauts don't actually see him and try to attack him. And then Jamie just kind of remarks that this is kind of a terrible way to go, where the Glorfnauts wind up destroying Megas while Captain Warlock just watches. But then Coop reveals that's actually not going to happen, and then points out that Jamie needs to have more faith in him, and then proceeds to rip out Megas' horn and chuck it into the hole that he made on the saving grace, which of course causes all of the Glorfnauts to just kind of surround the saving grace and board it and completely destroy it from the inside. And of course, this causes Captain Warlock to briefly cloak and then briefly uncloak, and by the time we actually see all the Glorfnauts actually attack him and destroy it, we don't see what happens to the ship because obviously he cloaks it, but when he comes back, it's completely destroyed. And of course, Captain Warlock that points out that he will swear his vengeance against them, and also does declare that he will one day make Kiva his queen. And Kiva does indeed proceed to actually mock him a little bit by also both mocking his accent and also parroting something that he says earlier in the episode about how he was able to about how foolish it is to actually fight back against the Glorfnauts, and that he's the only man who's ever actually fought off against a bunch of them. And of course this causes him to become very annoyed, and he screams out Kiva's name while actually disappearing into warp space. And of course, back on Earth in Goat's junkyard, Coop, Kiva, and Jamie are currently rebuilding Megas' horn so that they can actually put it back in the robot. And of course, Coop Coop is actually very, very impressed about the fact that she was more than willing to actually trust him to fix it. And does also remark how she knew he was going to fix it. And she just points out that she just had faith in him and was just kind of hoping he would, which Jamie of course remarks is a very bad idea. And of course, it's at this point where Goat actually winds up showing up dressed in a bunch of pirate gear, and immediately tries to seduce Kiva with Kiva just outright asking what the hell is wrong with him. And of course, after trying several of the piratey pickup lines that she was subjected to, he then reveals that the guys actually told him that she's into that kind of stuff. And after shooting a glare at both Coop and Jamie, she does point out that at least he's better than Warlock, and of course he does take full opportunity to actually gloat about it, and at which point Kiva remarks that maybe he isn't, and then they all proceed to share a laugh. But in any case, then the episode then ends with this is admittedly one of the weirder parts of the episode because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But at the end of the episode, in the ending credits sequence, we see Captain Warlock as well as Go, who is just there. It's not explained why. And also Coop, who obviously shouldn't be there. But they all add two new portraits to Captain Warlock's gallery. Of course, Captain Warlock and Goat are staring at a picture of Kiva that he just put up. Well, Coop put up his own picture of a Philly's cheesesteak and is staring at it. And that's completely in character, but it doesn't make sense why either Goat or Coop are there. Obviously, Captain Warlock was the main antagonist of the episode. It doesn't make sense that he and Coop would be friends, and of course, Goat is just kind of there. But while it makes sense that he and Captain Warlock would share an intimate moment over the fact that they both love Kiva, it doesn't make sense for him to be there either because he's only really friends with Coop. And I mean, it makes sense from a character standpoint, but it's just this weird sequence at the end of the episode that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And I mean, it is in character with their characters, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense why either Coop or Goat are there with Captain Warlock. It just doesn't make sense. And I get that that's probably the point. It's supposed to be like this end of the episode sequence where it's like it's supposed to reference the plot of the episode at the very end, but yeah, this is the only one I've seen so far that hasn't made a whole lot of sense. I don't really like this one, but I don't really like the ending sequence, but I did like the episode. I mean, obviously, space pirates are an interesting idea, and that is indeed a thing that I've seen in a couple other science fiction things that are actually kind of cool, but more to the point, this episode is just interesting in that it, obviously Captain Warlock is actually a reference to Captain Hadrock, which is again another famous pirate that is very much has a similar fetish to Captain Warlock, and of course Warlock's name is very much a reference to the fact that he lies and deceives people, and because I think that's what Warlock is. It's somebody who kind of breaks moral codes and stuff to actually do some really evil things with magic, and also it's kind of a reference to that as well. The fact that that's literally what where the idea of Warlock comes from. But of course, Captain Warlock is an interesting character in that almost exclusively throughout the episode, he's cordial and a nice guy, but he has a bit of an obsession with redheads, and that ultimately is why he tries to pursue Kiva so hard. And what we find out is that of course he has a thing for all redheads. It's not just Kiva. He will absolutely go after pretty much anybody that he thinks is attractive and is a redhead. And as we find out, it doesn't really matter the species or if they're even a girl. He just likes redheads. But yeah, in any case, that is my review of Megas XLR. What you guys think? Let's get discussing over in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It does really help me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks that are my way of saying thanks. So be sure to check those out. Link is down in the description. And finally, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen as well. Top video is the most recent video. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the bottom video is actually the link to my previous playlist of these that I've done Courage Month. If you absolutely want to see that, again, link is down in the description. Go and check that out. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!